Hey, good evening, everybody, and happy Sunday night as we come to you live from, we're going to say Navigating Leadership, but yes, Navigating Leadership number 58. Josh Tovar, great to have you alongside once again. My name is Dean Packard. I am the proud principal of Charlton Middle School in Charlton, Massachusetts, and a co-host. And with my good friend Josh, and Chris Starcheski's out tonight. He's on special assignment once again, but he'll be back very soon. But it's great to see you on a Sunday night. Sunday nights are all about getting better together. Josh, nice to see you. How are you, my friend?
Hey, everybody. Josh Tovar, proud principal of Memorial Pathway Academy in Garland ISD, Garland, USA, sending a big hola, buenas tardes to everybody out there from Alaska to Hawaii, from Maine to Florida. Greetings to everybody, making sure that we're all learning from each other, making sure that we're all stronger together. So today in the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing about supporting SEL instruction, because right now, as we're hitting that season of testing of protocols, everything that's out there, it's about providing tools for everybody that's out there. So today we have a great guest, which is Tim Stephenson, and he provided us a book that's Beyond the Classroom. And we'll be talking about certain ideas about education strategies, because it might help somebody that's out there that needs that one tool right now, that one tool of engaging, making sure that we help providing the best opportunities for students in the classroom. And that's all it takes. You know what? Our profession, as we always say, it's the best profession out there. It's a profession that creates everybody out there, all the other professions, yet we beg, borrow, and steal ideas from each other, and we make them our own. So I'm very excited tonight to making sure the team enlightens us as administrators, because maybe we, tomorrow when we start doing these observations, these walkthroughs, we say, hey, Teacher X, I heard this last night. This might work with you. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he brings to the table tonight to make sure that our tool chest is full of tools for our classroom instruction.
Well, I had a great chance to talk with Tim prior to us coming on tonight, and and he was telling me all about his 29-year journey in the same district. And that doesn't happen often. I've been with the same school district right now for 28 years. I believe this is my 29th. So we're in the same ballpark when it comes to that. So there's a lot of longevity there, and there's rationale for staying and really creating those deep roots within your district. And I'd love to hear, some of those connections he's had with kids and families, because over 29 years, you get to see kids come and go, and then some kids of the kids come back in, which makes it really kind of interesting to see that cyclical cycle. So, hey, why don't we bring Tim in, and why don't you give him his just due, and welcome, Tim. We're glad you're with us tonight. Welcome to our show.
Well, thank you very much. You got a great intro going on. The two of you are well rehearsed.
We've done it a few times. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'll tell you what, we always look for, we call them the diamonds in the rough, the people who are creating ripples in the field of education that make it a little bit better for all of us. And that's you tonight, my friend. So, you're coming to us all the way from Canada, long way away, my friend. But I'll tell you what, it's a small world when we all come together like this. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the way you teach and some things like that to get us started?
Yeah, you're saying the ripple effect. I always call it the butterfly effect. We do our little things wherever we are, and you just wonder where's that little effect? Although it's small here, it's going to magnify as it moves through all the people that you talk with and you work with. And that's the neat thing about being a teacher is you get to affect the future. And whatever you want the future to be, you're in the right position if you're a teacher. I'll tell you right now. But I'm a science teacher in Langley, British Columbia. West coast of Canada, and the school is Walnut Grove Secondary. It's a big school. Over 2,000 kids attend that school, and I'm a science teacher. I teach junior science, but I also do senior chemistry. But my specialty area is astronomy, which is a course that I developed myself, mostly out of a sort of a real love for learning about space and knowing full well that students love to learn about space. So I developed a course under with the permission of the administrators, and off we went. And now I teach 2 or 3 blocks of it every year.
First of all, I love science because science is so hands-on. It's so inquisitory. You've got to be able to roll in and get into all this stuff and just really be thinking about it. So your whole career in science?
Whole career.
Whole career, man. Written curriculum. He's not only that, he's written a book. He's been a TEDx speaker. This guy has done a little bit of everything. We're going to hear a little bit about all that tonight. So, as we kick off right here and we just start talking about it, let's talk about what do we need to know, in regards to how how the curriculum starts for you and what that looks like and what the classroom dynamic is all about. Let's go right there, because your book itself that you wrote is all about, just digging into that classroom experience. So why don't let's talk a little bit about the book first.
Yeah. I've had a particular way of dealing with the classroom. I probably started way back at the beginning of my career in the early 90s. As a teacher on call, I'd go into the classroom and there would always be notes or whatever there to, left by the teacher who's away. And here's what you should cover and here's what you should teach. And I always thought, I wonder what these students want to learn about. I mean, it's sort of an opportunity to sort of hang out and get to know them a little bit. And we just sort of talk and they'd say something or other and about what they've been learning. And I'll say, I actually know something about that. And we just sit and talk and I'd expand on some of the things that I knew. And sometimes we didn't even get to what the teacher left. Maybe that's my bad. Maybe that's bad on me for doing that. But quite honestly, it was better because it was at that moment, it was what the students wanted. It's what they were asking about, and how much of teaching is spent teaching what I want to tell them rather than what they want to know. And so that kind of mentality started to stick with me because I saw how it resonated with the students. I saw how they responded in such a positive way. And so as time unfolded and I started more and more looking towards what do the students want to know. And then as I got to be more experienced, what do students need to know? And thinking about what's coming down the road for their future. And so in terms of curriculum, I mean, we're all obligated to teach the curriculum, but I always look at the curriculum like it's sort of a suggestion, and we'll get to it. Don't worry. But there's some stuff that you need to know in order to fully understand the curriculum, and kids seem to respond well to it. And I'm always open to them driving the course. What do you want to know? And so a philosophy I use is, whatever you were expecting this course to be, it's going to be completely different. And that's always fun to see what their response is. Sometimes they're skeptical, but in time they tend to come out and say, yeah, that was different.
Tim, the $1 million question though is, why do we need to know this? You start thinking about that, and I don't care if it's science, math, social studies, English. The big question on every student's mind is why, and how do you combat against that? Because that is something from a classroom teacher perspective that you've got to be able to just hit that topic and sell it hard.
Well, I wrote about that very thing in my book. Actually, this question, why do we need to know this? I think there's an element of among teachers of that's the frustrating question. Like, I don't want to deal with why. It's because you have to. It's in the curriculum. Now be quiet and let me teach. And I've never bought into that way of thinking. And I think it's the most important question that a teacher has to be able to answer. In fact, if you can't answer that question, if you can't justify what you're teaching and explain to you why this matters, in my case, I won't teach it. If there's anything in the curriculum that's required, I'm going to find a way to teach it that results in them learning something that they'll benefit from. And so there'll be no question about why we need to learn this, because they're going to find it so fascinating. They're going to want to learn about it. And I've found a way to get at that.
So when you're digging into the whole content area, and me being a history teacher, that's my background. And, you had some kids that come to us at the high school level that they see the movies and they're really into their content area. Let's say, I'm trying to make a comparison with Canada and the United States, since I don't know your curriculum, but I'm just using the content of history. Let's say that the kid's looking forward to, I don't know, something that connects us with the War of 1812, right? And he's like, he or she is like really into that. And they want to know the ins and outs about what happened. Why did the U.S. want to invade? But then, you just did a quick drive-through that. What if they really don't get what they were looking for as part of your content? How do you address that? What angle do you take?
Well, I mean, the student you described does exist. You love teaching them because they're keen and they want to learn more and they want to know more, and you like that, obviously. I think honestly, there's one thing about teaching is there's really no substitute for time. The longer you teach, the more of the sort of the the little bits and pieces that you pick up along the way that you can bring in at and what point you bring them in. And I know what you're saying, and I want to be careful that I'm not suggesting that I leave things out, or I'll teach the curriculum, but it has to be taught in such a way that it has some relevance and meaning to the world. Now, let me give you an example. In chemistry, we have to teach about acids and bases, and the pH scale and this sort of thing. There's no better way to teach that in this day and age, 3 decades now into the 21st century, dealing with a climate crisis. There's no better way to talk about acids and bases than to talk about ocean acidification. It is a critical issue in our world. And nobody can say, why do we need to know this? I'll tell you why we need to know this, because we need people to understand this, because we've got a major issue to solve. And so let's talk about what the pH scale is. How does the concentration of carbon dioxide affect the pH of the ocean? What is CO2 plus H2O? What is carbonic acid? I can teach all the things that are in the curriculum, but in a way that the students are saying, what are you telling me is going on in the ocean? There's a problem out there. I didn't even know about this problem. And then we'll go and take it further. We'll go down to the ocean. Now, I live in an area where I'm near the ocean, and so I can go down and scoop up a bottle of it and bring it back to the lab. And we'll do a titration on ocean water from just down the street here, and we'll find out what's the pH. And then we'll do a global comparison. Now I'm learning about acids and bases, but it's in such a way that students are fascinated by this. I've even had students bring water back from other places around the world when they go on vacation. They bring back under 100 mils, of course. And we titrate water from all over the place, and we compare it to a global survey of what the pH is of the oceans. And I've covered the curriculum, but I've done it in a way that has meaning and relevance. And I had to be creative to think about that. I had to think of, how can I teach this? Because if I don't do it like this, kids are going to say, why do I need to know this? Why do I need to know what the pH of such and such? Yeah. And if I can't answer that question, I got to come up with a better way of teaching it, which in this case, I think I have.
I agree, Tim, because that's one of the things that, I mean, as a history teacher, that's what kids bounce back at me. Why do I need to know this? This happened 500 years ago. That's the on. I used to say that. I disliked history. I questioned why I had to learn Texas history, why I had to learn all these things. So like you said, once I wore the other shoes of being the educator, that was the most crucial part. High five, 100% is making the connection to the real world experience. And then that's when you engage them. That's when you see the pop in their eyes. They say, yes. Oh, that's the best feeling for all of us educators, when we see the pop in the classroom and they're like, I got it, right, Tim? That's the best feeling out there. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, meaningful and relevant. The 2 words that I think as a building leader are so important to hook kids. I always say to teachers, you know what, you got to stand before the class. I want to see every eye on you, and I want to see everybody just engaged in everything that's going on. And by making it relevant, you do that. There's no doubt about that. Now, you said some words, I should say, that said that the teacher needs to be the best student in class. Okay, so if the teacher has to be the best student in class, who are the teachers to make them that best student in class? That's so hard, because that's ongoing professional development in the world of what you guys do.
I'm telling you, that is an ongoing thing. Like, I graduated from university. I got my Bachelor of Science degree in 1987. It's a long time ago. Now, if I haven't learned anything new since then what in the world am I doing in the classroom today? So I have to be learning all the time. Right. Now, I've found personally,
stop a second. You have to be learning, and you've been doing this 29 years. Tim, what do you mean? I thought I knew everything. I just cruise now. That's not true.
It's just not true.
I love it. Okay.
It's just not true. I mean, I'm learning new stuff. Like, if you came into my class in 2019, I'm not teaching the same things as I did in 2021. I'll give you an example. And I learned this stuff, and I seek these things out. I seek them out because it's my responsibility as the teacher to be up to date. So, for example, in the world of biology and genetics, we talk about mutations and how do your chromosomes, where does aging come from? And for You go back 7 or 8 years, the key word everybody was talking about was the telomeres, and the telomeres are the capsid at the end of your chromosomes, and they tend to shrivel and shorten as your cells divide, and this apparently brings about aging. And that's just not what they're saying anymore. That's if I continued to teach that today, I'd be teaching stuff that was 8 years outdated. So I got to find out what's going on now, and I've found these teachers. I seek them out. I found a lot of them through social media, Twitter, documentaries on Netflix. If I watch a documentary on Netflix and there's some expert being interviewed and I'm compelled by what I'm learning, I'll seek that guy out or that woman. I'll find them on Twitter and I'll contact them. I'll say, well, you got to tell me more about what's going on about this. I saw your documentary. I've had some of them on my own podcast.
I was going to say that. Could you talk about that for a second, Science 360, and how that kind of intertwines into all this?
Yeah, so like Science 360, like so many other things that are these COVID projects, right? So how many things got started out of COVID? Well, this is one of them. And I just felt at the time I needed to have a way to stay connected to my students while we're sort of separated. And so I started this podcast, and it's gotten better as time, things will do as time goes on. And I've sought out guests who will talk about areas of their expertise. And my thought is if a teacher were to listen to this interview, they'd go, wow, that's fascinating stuff. I didn't know that. Now I'm going to take that back to my classroom and I'm going to share with my students at least a bit of what I've learned. And I can introduce a topic. And then the students can say, well, do you know more about this? You may say, no, I don't know more about this. But we can learn about it together. I heard about it a little bit on this podcast. Now, as a class, let's come together and let's learn more about it together, because this is quite a fascinating topic. And so I've got over 50 episodes now, and released one just yesterday on salmon. If you're interested in salmon, the life cycle, it's very fascinating because salmon are critical to the Pacific Northwest, and they're in dire straits right now. And so I had a guy on who was an expert in this, and it was quite interesting. It could make some very, very good lessons in a science classroom.
Can I just jump in there real quick, Tim and Dean? That's how we started our professional development at the beginning of the school year. I took out the 1800s tool set for dentistry. Oh. And I showed that on how they used to take care of the dentists, of the medieval tools, the torture, the things that they use, right? And I go, would you like that to be your dentist who never went back and got any updates, didn't use the new technology to work on your mouth? So that's one of the things that us as educators, we need to keep on doing what you described. High five again, Tim. Exactly. Because that's the things that I've been saying to our team members, is making sure that we use what we have at hand, and it's free. Tim, it's free. And it's gobs. It's gobs all over. I mean, I don't have enough time to keep up with all the podcasts to try to make me a better leader in the campus I work at. So thank you again, man. You're full pure high fives today, brother, because you know what? We need to keep on recharging ourselves and making sure that we're a better version as educators.
Better version. Yeah. There's just so much out there, so many podcasts. I learned so much from different people coming on, and it's just unreal that it's free. I can listen to these experts from NASA and all over the place, and they're talking about the latest and greatest, and I'm going, and I hear it for free.
Free.
Teachers need to be on this.
That's right.
It's complete demonetization of knowledge, and it's something that every teacher, and Dean, you make a good point. Like, I've been teaching almost 30 years, and I'm learning new stuff every day, and it's what makes my job interesting. It's what keeps me alive. If I didn't do this, I'd be going to school in my sleep. I could teach what I teach in my sleep, but if I learn something new, I'm wide awake, man.
Well, that's because you take yourself out of the comfortable lane and you become uncomfortable, so you can teach more kids and make a bigger difference. I love that, because that's not just resting on your laurels. Good stuff.
Yeah. We digress real quick. Tim, what were you saying prior to the 360? I mean, you were in the middle of a thought there. I'm one of those guys during. If you forgot it, that's fine. Just wanted to go on into this next part about going back to the connections with a project and making sure that our kids are fully engaged in the learning. So if we want them to lean into the project, we want them to lean into the lesson, whatever we're performing at that moment, because I believe that teaching is a great performance art. And if you're good at it, you have the whole audience, and your kids, whether it be 15 or 35, that's your audience. And the more engaging that you have, the more learning that will be going on. So how would you help, or how would you present the whole leaning in via projects to your students to have them part of a collective learning from each other?
Well, I guess I'm thinking of two things right now. Projects in the class is part of the course, and then there's projects external to the class that are sort of after school things. And I utilize both of them extensively. In my junior science classes and in my astronomy class, there are no tests. I don't give a test. I don't want to teach something and get kids all excited about it and then say, oh, and don't forget on Tuesday, you got to memorize all these things.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second. You said no assessments. Now, and I'm okay with that
No
because
test.
that's innovative thinking. Okay. How is that received by administration and your learning community? Just add that ripple.
It's received well. I'm actually more concerned about how it's received by parents, because when they come in for parent teacher conferences, they'll ask, so how does this course run? And I'll say to them, look, you got to trust me on this one, but I don't give a test. You went to school in the 80s. This isn't the 80s anymore.
That's right.
And I don't have a textbook. I don't have kids learning chapter 4 content and then doing some review questions, then writing a test on it. I just feel it's killing education. It's killing it's driving kids away. And it's the reason why kids don't like school. So how do I assess them? How do I know that they're learning stuff? Well, it's an ongoing process, but it's largely through project-based learning, where we'll learn together for a week or 2 weeks, and then at a certain point I'll say, you know what, you guys have learned a lot of stuff. Now here's the deal. There's this, and maybe 17, 18 different things that we've been talking about for the last 6 or 7 classes. Which one of these things do you want to be an expert on? And I'm going to give you the time to become an expert on one of those things. And then after 3 or 4 classes where you're doing some research, you're going to come over here, you're going to present what you found out to the whole class. And we're all going to sit there and go, wow, that's interesting. At least I hope that's what they're going to say. And is that enough? Well, I think so. Because the contrary to that is, well, I could always make them memorize stuff for a test. And then they could write the test, and there'd be a class average of 63.2, and tomorrow they'll have forgotten all of it.
That's right.
And so now they're doing these projects. They're working hard on them. They're developing things on Canva, and they're doing stuff with different programs that they're doing, and they're presenting, and they're talking, and they're collaborating. And I just can't see how that's not better.
Oh, and there's student engagement. Don't stop to think about that for a second, because when you're in front of a classroom and orating out and having them take notes, they're only half listening. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
Okay. If you've got them up, you've got them thinking, you've got them discovering, you've got them questioning. Think about the difference of that type of learning and how that affects the brain. Good for you. Informative assessment. Yeah, you're in front of the class regurgitating the knowledge you just had. So that's a form of assessment any way you want to slice it.
It is, and I work with these kids for a whole semester. We used to be a linear school, and now we're a semester school, so we're just getting used to that idea. But I work with these kids for 5 months, and I see them progress. I see where they're at. I see that they're improving, and they're better communicators. They're better problem solvers. They're taking on bigger challenges. Isn't this what we want?
Yep.
Isn't that better than to say, yeah, but they're writing tests better? The test thing is more and more, I think, needs to go the way of the dodo bird. We got to come up with better, more creative ways of assessing these kids.
Agreed.
You know what, Tim? And again, I'm going to piggyback on what you said right now. The last 3 months, I was the U.S. history teacher because we were a teacher shortage. Mm-hmm. And the kiddos that I was teaching were kids that just arrived to the country. That English is their second language. So it's kids from El Salvador, from Honduras, from Mexico. And so do they know anything about U.S. history? No. They have no idea about U.S. history. They have no idea. They didn't know who Uncle Sam was. Oh. Enough with that, okay? So during that time, I agree that I use that system right there. I would not give assessments. I would do matching pictures. I would use gallery walks, and we would do talks amongst ourselves. I would translate the vocabulary words that they need to know when they do get the assessment by the state. And let me tell you, they would present it to me in Spanish, but they were able to get the salient points of what the gallery walk was nonstop. And then when I would do the matching pieces,
Yeah.
and I would put a picture of Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall, they would match it together. So the knowledge is there, the acquisition was there. They just didn't have the prior knowledge of everything that we've grown up with in America. And so hey, number 3, Tim, high five, exactly.
Whoa.
It does work.
You know something, just as an example, speaking of history, we were in Mexico last week and in Cancun, and we took a tour down to sort of closer to Tulum, and there was a fantastic presentation on the history of Mexico. I knew nothing about the history of Mexico. I came out of there because I was so enthralled by a brilliant presentation of music and dancing and just visually, and it just was appealing, and it drew me in. And they mentioned this guy, Hernan Cortez. Have you heard of this guy? And I'm like, Hernan, I've never heard of this guy. And so what did I do? Now I want to learn more about him. And so I'm reading on my own. This is the goal of my classes, is I'm going to introduce you to something in a way that kind of make you go, what? I never heard of this. Tell me more about this stuff. And if I can do that, they're going to want to learn more on their own. And I walked out there going, the next day I was learning more about Hernan Cortez and what he did, and fascinating stuff. And I was learning, and they did not give me a test.
They did not, but they force you to want to dig and learn more. And ultimately, that is the whole goal behind education. If you can get every student that walks in your classroom to think that way and act that way, then you've definitely done your job above and beyond. There's no doubt about that. Hey, we talked a little bit about the curriculum. Okay, we all have curriculum that we have to follow, scope and sequence. We know the standards that need to be covered. But when we start thinking about that, is the curriculum the driver or the passenger when it comes to what we have to teach the kids? And that being said, and you touched upon this earlier, as long as what you do has relevance and meaning, those are the two catalysts for driving whatever you teach. So talk a little bit about your viewpoint on the curriculum. And I know you've already said, I don't have a textbook. I don't need to do that. I'm going to make it real and relevant for you.
Hope I don't get in trouble. But, you know, like I got to speak in terms of British Columbia, the province of BC has been revamping their curriculum a lot over the last few years. And presently in science, junior science in particular, they call them the big ideas. And there's literally 4 broad statements. when teachers first saw it, they thought, I got to teach a whole course on 4 statements. How am I going to do that? But the reality is it is left it wide open for interpretation. And it's still the big ones, chemistry, biology, physics. It's all those big ones. But within them, there are these opportunities to explore kind of at your creative will. And so, so for example, if I'm going to teach in chemistry something about atomic structure or balancing chemical equations, there's a couple of ways you could do it. One is the traditional way, where I'm going to give you worksheets and I'm going to sort of force you into it. What happens is some kids pick it up very fast. Some kids don't. And then the kids who don't pick it up fast are the reason why the teacher says, well, I'm going to do this for 5 more days until you all get it. And once you all get it, we can have a test. And the kids are like, oh, I'm dying on the inside. And so rather than, why don't we look at the atoms of the periodic table that everybody hears about? Have you ever heard about carbon footprints? What's the deal with carbon? Why is everybody sort of all bad about carbon? Well, let's learn more about carbon, and we'll learn about atomic structure via that one, because it's all over the news. I hear a lot about lithium these days. Electrification. Well, let's learn about lithium then. Do you hear much about Rutherfordium? You don't. So I'm not going to focus on that one. So I'm not going to say here, memorize the periodic table, but I bet you've heard about uranium. Let's learn a bit about it. So let's hit the ones that the kids hear a lot about. And so, for example, we talk about energy. Energy is a requirement. We're not going to go back to the caves. We're not going to go back to burning, torches and chasing our food down and killing it. Like I want to go to the grocery store and get food, right? So then let's learn about how we get our power. Well, there's a great chemical reaction. It's probably the best chemical reaction ever. And it is simply H2 plus O2 gives you H2O. And in there's energy involved. And that energy can be electricity. Well, this is a chemical reaction that matters, and it's really what they base it on. It's called the hydrogen fuel cell. It could be the future of energy. I don't know. They're working on it. That's some fascinating stuff, and it doesn't involve any carbon, which apparently is a greenhouse gas. So there's aspects of the curriculum that have to be taught, but if you're going to teach it, you may as well use it to teach something that kids are going to hear about. And it's sort of your job as the teacher to find out what those things are.
It's interesting you say that, Tim, and I'm just thinking in the back of my head right now, because a lot of times kids will be struggling with connecting with the curriculum, and whatever those struggles might be, they're often resolved from within the heart, in the learning of what's going on. You made a comment to us in the pregame here. We talked about this. Be the author of your own class. What does that mean? I mean, I get it. I was a coach. I'm a leader. You want to help kids tell their own story. You want teachers to be able to articulate out what they do and why they do it. But what does that mean to be the author of your own class, in your words?
Well, I think partly what I've been talking about, which is to seek out rationale for what you're teaching and looking for the ways that it's applicable in the world. I'm always thinking of teaching things from the point of view of, will students hear about this if they were to watch the news or check a news feed of some sort? Will they hear about this? And if they're going to hear about it, I kind of want to make sure they understand it when it comes up. Do these things come up in conversation? The ones that come up in conversation, those are the ones I'm probably going to teach you about. But so being the author of your own classroom simply means that is you're going to use the required elements of your course in a way that makes sense to the future of the students. I want to teach to their future. I don't want to teach to my past. I don't want to use that line, well, it worked for me when I was in school.
Good for you.
That's got to go. I got to be thinking about where are they going to be in 10 and 20 years. And there's big changes coming. I was just listening to a fantastic podcast, actually, which, speaking of podcasts, maybe you've heard of the Rich Roll podcast. And he had a guest on, oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was Tim Ferriss, actually. Tim Ferriss had a guest on named Jane McGonigal, who's written a book recently called Imaginable. And her whole premise is, imagine what the future is going to be. In 2008, she said to a group of people, imagine if there was, say, a virus. And imagine if it meant people had to stay apart. And imagine if you had to wear a mask everywhere. What would it be? And this was in 2008, and they did a whole simulation on this. So I say to teachers today, imagine what the students are going to see in their world in 2032 and 2042. We're this close to artificial intelligence. We carry it around in our hands in the form of a cell phone. The brain computer interface is on the verge of happening, and the world is getting so technical. You've got to start imagining it. And I'm telling you right now, I don't see a lot of kids. Like, for instance, if I was an auto shop teacher, I don't know that I'd be working too hard on teaching them how to tune a carburetor. Like I don't see very many classes on how to shoe a horse, because there aren't any horses going around the roads anymore. And if you want to learn about it, you can, but it shouldn't be in the school. So what's happening? I got to start thinking, what's the world going to look like? And seek out those opportunities to teach those things. And I thought that podcast really got me thinking about imagining the future. We got to imagine the future and stop thinking about the past and the way, well, it worked for me. That, earlier I said something about the parents. That's why I'm always kind of worried when I have parent-teacher conferences, because they're not always thinking this way. And they come in thinking, well, I know what school was like. I could be a teacher because I went to school. But they're not thinking this way. But I tell you right now, every parent I've talked to has said, I wish there was more classes like this where kids are really thinking this stuff through.
You're stepping out of the fairway. I kind of like it. I think
Stepping
that's a lot about tomorrow and not a lot about yesterday, which is good, because these kids need skill sets for the next 10 to 20 years when they get out of here. So great stuff.
Yeah, that's one of those things that on YouTube I like showing. The shift happens, and they do one every year about how everything changes. I highly recommend it out there. Administrators, teachers, check that out on YouTube. Shift Happens. It's one of the ongoing, just like you said, Tim, where we're still talking about things of the past when we know fixing the horseshoes. Like when we're getting ready. Elon Musk is taking over the world. And so we have all these electric. That's all you're hearing right now is the way that the investment's going to be there. So I see that vision. Now,
every industry in the world is advancing at light speed, except
education.
School. And we've got to do it. And I'll tell you right now, you hear a lot about teachers leaving the profession. I hear about it in the U.S. I read about it in the U.S. It's probably happening in Canada too. And hang in there. And if you start thinking this way, if you get excited, like for instance, I start school tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, I'm going back to school after having 2 weeks off for spring break. I can't wait to get there because I've been learning a bunch of stuff over the last couple of weeks, listening to podcasts and things. I can't wait to get into school to say, hey, guess what I learned about? This is some fascinating stuff. You got to know about this stuff. So how is it that after 29 years, I can't wait to get back to school? It's because I'm thinking this way. So if there's a teacher out there who's burning out and thinking, I just can't take this anymore, you got to change your mindset. And you got to take care of yourself, and you got to start learning things that makes you excited. Because if you're excited about what you're doing, the kids are going to be excited, and you can't wait to get to school. And fewer people will be leaving the profession. You haven't stuck around long enough to make a difference. You got to stick around. Right. It gets better.
Well, I think this is a great segue in regards to tell us a little bit more about beyond the classroom. Tell us about what you would bring. I'm the educator. The questioning that's in there, the motivation. What can we find when we purchase your book?
Well, a lot of what I've been saying is straight out of the book. A lot of it covers things like who's been your influencer, who's influencing your style. Like I look at different. I never miss out an opportunity when I'm listening to a speaker, whether it's on a podcast or a presentation of any sort, to pick up something about the way they do what they do. And it influences the way I do what I do. And I'm very careful to say, I'm not trying to be like them, but I'm taking bits and pieces all over the place. And so it influences how I deliver material. There is a section in the book where I talk about how we just love our curriculum. But I give an example where we were out for dinner with a lovely couple, and as things go, the man asked me a couple of questions about science. And after saying a couple of questions, asked me a couple of things, I could tell, you don't really remember your science. I can tell you don't remember your science from grade 9. But then I looked around his house and I thought, but you've been pretty successful. I don't think it matters that you didn't remember your grade 9 science. and I take that perspective and I say, you know what? We put so much effort into forcing these things in, these round pegs into square holes. And in the end, does it really matter? That kid who's being disruptive, he's 14 years old. You know what? 6 years from now, the kid's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. Let's not stress out about him right now. Let's work with him. Let's roll with him a little bit. Let's understand that he's coming from a place, maybe he's had some trouble at home, but he's going to be fine. Because he's got elements of a personality that you can respect, and there's something in there. So it's this whole perspective that I try to bring out in the book, that teaching doesn't have to be the way it was when you went to school. It can be better than that, and that's the direction I go. And then I talk a lot about how I've developed a theme. I'm without a doubt in my school, people will know me as Astro Stephenson. I teach this astronomy course. They know full well that if they take my science course, they're going to learn a lot about climate change. They're going to learn a lot about climate solutions. So these two themes drive a lot of what I do, but it makes me excited to teach it because I believe it's important. And so I think it's important that in your school, what are you known for? What do you bring to the table? If you're not sure, can I encourage you to work on that and develop something that you could say, you know what I'm known for? I'm known for this. And it'll make you a more desirable teacher and to make you a more exciting teacher to be around. So those are the sort of things that come out in this book.
Well, the book sounds real. It sounds like it's a microcosm of your journey. You know, you're definitely a pioneer, and you're well ahead of your years. And even at 29 years, I still think you have a long way to go to be able to get to where you want to be. You're like that kid in the candy store saying, "What can I have? I want to have more." And I'll tell you what, that metaphor is just all about making those bigger ripples and really making a difference for kids. And everything you're talking about, Tim, is about experiences in the classroom. And if those kids leave your classroom saying the experience that I had was second to none, they will remember that content. They will put it to practical use, and they will be able to carry that with them wherever they go. And that's going to serve them well. Okay. There's no doubt about that. If we could get every other educator to jump on that and say, listen, this isn't 1970 anymore. It's not even 1980 or 1990. Everything needs to evolve. Everything needs to change, and change starts from within.
And kids these days, it's been well documented now that they're not the ones that are going to get the job and get the mortgage and buy the house and get the car and those sorts of things. Kids these days are more interested in purchasing experiences.
Yeah,
they're more interested in trips and travel and mission. And they're not as interested as we were when we were kids about, we got to get a job so I can buy a house. They don't care about a house. They want to go around the world and change it. And so experiential is the key word for kids these days. So that's got to be brought out in the schools. We got to be giving them experiences, not just sort of nuggets of information. But kids have changed, and I think they've changed for the better because they're more aware and they're more conscious of the world around them, and they want to make change. And big things will happen in the world because of the people that we teach today. Hey, don't forget, I bring this one up all the time. I think it's in my book as well, that in 1957, when Sputnik went up, they went and turned to the schools, right? And they changed the curriculum because they knew they got to beat the Russians to the moon. And guess what happened? Well, they did it. And 12 years later, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are stepping onto the moon. And the average age of the engineers and the technicians in ground control in Houston, Texas, was 28. Well, 12 years earlier, they were in grade 11. And they were right in the middle of a change in the curriculum. And so what happened when we had a major world issue? They turned to the schools, and they did it. And now we've got all kinds of issues in the world today. We got all kinds of political issues and climate issues. Where should we turn? We got to turn to the schools. So it worked before. What's our moonshot today? Let's go back to the school and fire these kids up.
Yeah, definitely the starting block, no doubt.
Awesome, Tim. Thank you very much. I mean, high fives for everything. I'm on board. I'm 100%.
Right on, Josh.
Tim, 100%. Thank you very much for being here tonight. You dropped a lot of knowledge on us out there. Please ask questions. Make sure you have anything there for the rebroadcast. Just say, thank you. It's hard for me to say speechless, but I'm 100% on what you said tonight. Thank you for being here. Dean, I'm ready to go.
Hey, we call him a master teacher in my neck of the woods. Someone who's always willing to roll up their sleeves and learn and then lead and then don't be afraid to share out. That's great stuff. That's great stuff. You make everybody better around you by doing that, and you create a really strong school culture. There's no doubt about that. Josh, thank you very much there. Hey, you're a pioneer, my friend. You're great to talk to tonight. On behalf of Josh and myself, we want to say thank you. And Chris, who isn't here, he would have loved to have spoken to you as well. He's a math science guy. He's the type of guy you missed out on him, but I'm sure he's watching from home right now. I'm surprised he hasn't chimed in at this point in time. But listen, we'd love to have you back on again in the future because you're doing great things. Hey, where can people buy your book? That's what we forgot to ask.
It's on Amazon. Really, if you go to Amazon and search Beyond the Classroom, there's actually a couple books called Beyond the Classroom, but make sure you put my name in there with it. You'll see it. It's the one with the little girl with the telescope. My daughter-in-law designed the cover. I really like it, and that's where you'll find it. And ships out in a day. It's crazy. I don't know how they do it, but
they get it out. That's not a bad thing. Well, thanks for making us all a little bit better, Tim.
Hey, Dean, don't forget about Thursday. What's going on Thursday?
Well, you talk to me, my friend. It's Thursday night again.
Hey, everybody, don't forget. We had some knowledge dropped tonight by Tim, but every Thursday we have the Red Zone. Join us Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, together with a roundtable of administrators discussing today's topics. We need your help. We need your knowledge so that we could all grow stronger together. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you very much, Dean. Appreciate you.
Stay on, guys.
It was awesome. Loved it.
Have a great week. Okay. Keep doing what you're doing because you're making a difference.